We are back, and we are joined now by Ed Zitron, host of the Better Offline podcast and publisher of the Where's Your Ed At on Substack. Ed, thanks so much for coming on
Ghost.
the show today.
It's on
Sorry?
Ghost. It's
On
on Ghost.
Ghost.
I don't
I'm
support
so
Substack.
sorry.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
so
bad.
Everyone makes this mistake. It's okay.
It's okay. I mean, our newsletter is on Ghost too, right? And
Oh,
I
yeah.
It is.
I never even remember. But
It's
yes,
not a big
so
deal.
that's the one that isn't, I guess, funded by a bunch of Silicon
Isn't
Valley freaks.
recommending things with swastikas. No.
No, yeah, that's helpful. Ed, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course.
So I know you're asked this every single day, so I will ask this question, but then amend it. You're probably asked every day, when is this damn AI bubble gonna burst? So my question to you is not when, but how is it going to burst?
So thanks to Oracle, we are now set up for a very obvious collapse, which is, so yesterday it was announced that Oracle had, well, it was day before yesterday during their earnings, where they missed on everything. They said they had $317 billion of new customer revenue incoming over the next, from financial year 2027. Turned out that $300 billion of that is from OpenAI, a company that loses billions of dollars a year and has never had more than $16 billion in the bank. So Oracle's stock jumped 40% and a bunch of others jumped with it. So just to be clear also, it came out from the Financial Times a couple of weeks ago that OpenAI's non-profit conversion is going to be delayed until next year because Microsoft is not really moving on the negotiations. So it's a very complex way of saying that this will end because OpenAI will probably die. And no one likes this story. No one wants to talk to me about it too much in the tech media right now, because when you really think about it, everything lies on top of OpenAI. They're the largest compute client in the world. They're $10 billion of Microsoft's Azure cloud revenue. They represent pretty much all paying users of generative AI, 20 million paying customers, 5 million business customers. Though I add, 500,000 of those are from Cal State University, 50 million annual contracts, so about $2.50 a user, losing a bunch of money, just like OpenAI tends to. In any case, OpenAI does not have the money to pay this contract. They're meant to start paying Oracle about $30 billion in 2027. These servers are not even in the data centers. There's only an eighth of them built. So Oracle neither has the capacity ready to serve the revenue, and OpenAI doesn't have the money. And the thing that no one seems to want to say is, where the hell are they getting it from? So,
Right.
And the answer is, there is literally not enough venture capital to fund this. Venture capital will run out. All of it, the dry powder of available venture capital will run out in 6 quarters at this current rate. And OpenAI, to do anything close to what they need to do, will need more than is currently available. Even if they move into private credit, it will not be sufficient. So the answer is, there's a good chance that OpenAI just does not convert to a for-profit entity. And if they don't by the end of the year, their current funding round from SoftBank gets cut in half. If they can't convert at all, they will die because they cannot go public. And at that point, if OpenAI cannot go public, they turn into a functional Ponzi scheme, where the only way for any investor to cash out is for other investors to enter the system. And this is not an accusation of fraud or anything. That's just how it will work if they can't convert, because they are this weird non-profit hybrid. So yeah, I think sometime in the next year or two, OpenAI simply falls over and dies and gets pecked to death by carrion birds. And once that happens, everything else falls apart, because OpenAI represents pretty much all of the revenue. They make more than everyone else combined. There's probably $40 billion of active revenue in generative AI, which is nothing. And
Yeah.
OpenAI represents, I think, like a third to a half of that. They represent all of the compute. They're most of Microsoft's compute. They're going to be most of Oracle's revenue, if any of that was true. OpenAI disappears. There's not that much business here. It's a fugazi. It's all made up. It's genuinely disgusting.
Yes, and that is, but all of this fugazi kind of runaround stuff is just there to create more investment. I mean, that's what's been
Yes.
agonizing about this whole discussion is that so much of the AI discussion, even the guys going on podcasts to talk about how it's going to take over the world and be like robots. That's how great our product is. It could take over the world. Anyone want to invest? It's all been so much billions and billions of money that's gone into this and basically wasted
Yes.
because it could disappear, as you say, overnight because they cannot create right now a model that is profitable.
Well, it's not just the lack of profitability. It's not just the fact that these companies in general don't make much money. I mean, Perplexity, AI startup, search engine type company that has raised $300 million in the last 2 months, two separate rounds. They spent over 140% of their revenue last year just on compute. These companies do not function in the way that regular startups do and on an operational level. The whole point of cloud software, the whole reason that tech has its valuations is that these are asset-light businesses where the biggest costs are salespeople and customer service. Generally, infrastructure has not been a problem. It is insane, but tech has now taken on the burden of classical industrialization without any path out. And what's crazy is I did an article called Why Everybody's Losing Money on AI last week. It's not clear that even the people providing compute, as in the people building the data centers with the GPUs in them, are making any profit. And if they are, it's going to take years. But on top of all of this crap don't work. It doesn't do that much. It's not that useful. These people going on podcasts and saying, oh, it's going to do this. Oh, China, not to insult the previous guest, but China's building powerful AI. Are they? Are we talking about generative AI? Because when it comes to large language models, so the underlying tech behind like ChatGPT and Claude and all that, that's not powerful. It's not doing much. And indeed, a ton of other AI stuff that isn't making that much money, but is far more interesting, is unrelated to this. But they want to conflate it because the actual products that are underneath, well, that are built on top of large language models are kind of crap. They're good for Casey Newton of Platformer. His best he's got was to say, oh, yeah, we should take this seriously. AGI is coming because it turns out that ChatGPT can do most kinds of homework. That's not why we send children to school. We don't send people to university to do homework so that the homework's complete. It's not like there's a goblin we feed the homework to. We do it so that people learn. It's just, it's fantastical, ridiculous, and ultimately dangerous.
And can we just even back up to how we got to this point here? Because so much of what you're talking about, the way that the model is completely not profitable, was a lot of how tech and some of these like gig economy companies were spoken about. And I know it's different, and I want you to explain how that's different, because I know, like, is Uber even making money? Like, I feel like they're still, I'm not sure, maybe it was like last year or 2 years they started making money, but like a lot of these tech companies started operating at a loss, and some have gotten over the hump, especially because they're now some of the most highly traded companies on the stock market and things like that. But this, you lay out how it's different in your piece, if you don't mind explaining to our audience.
So it's very simple. So Uber, Amazon Web Services is a comparison point that people make. They shouldn't. Over the course of 10 years, Amazon Web Services cost about 10% of the global investment from AI in the last 2. So Amazon Web Services is nothing to do with it. It was also cash flow positive within a couple years. Uber, I think they burned about $30 billion between 2019 and 2022. Now, most of that was between R&D and sales and marketing. They just burned a bunch of money to get people out, and then were taking a loss on drivers too. They cranked up the prices, horrible labor abusers. But the classic mistake here, and this is actually, I'm not saying you're doing this, but a lot of people posing that Uber was just like this are doing so in bad faith. Because the thing that nobody wants to admit is that Microsoft, Amazon, and Google paid for OpenAI and Anthropic's infrastructure. So people can say, oh, OpenAI has raised 60 billion or what have you. Anthropic's done the same. Oh, look, Uber burned a lot of money too. No, the actual total amount, when you really look at how much Amazon and Google handle Anthropic, Microsoft handles OpenAI, they've put between them hundreds of billions of dollars of infrastructure just for these companies. So it's not anything like Uber. The timeline is smaller. And on top of it, Uber's costs were not running the cars. This would be if like Uber's cars were run using giraffe blood. Right. And you had to blow them up at the end of every ride and build a new car by hand. And I sound like I'm being facetious, but the economics of this are completely and utterly insane. And they are getting worse because people have been saying, oh, the cost of inference is coming down. It's actually going up. There's a story by Christopher Mims about this in the Wall Street Journal. It's everywhere now. So this crap is getting more expensive to do the same things. It's still doing the same crap. And what they like to do is say, well, look, it's going up on the benchmarks. The benchmarks are made to make the models look better because you can't test these things on actual things that people do because they cannot do them.
Well, we have some data showing that at least these like larger firms here are starting to agree with you, because there are all these promises of how AI can help basically replace a workforce. But this is an article in Fortune magazine. AI adoption rates are declining and kind of have been for these larger firms who are beginning to realize this since basically the middle point of this year. Explain why that's happening, Ed.
Well, it's quite simple. It doesn't do enough. Like the enterprise will, and there was a paper that came out of MIT NANDA as well that said 95% of generative AI integrations have 0% return on investment. Now, within that, there was this statement that's very valuable, which is that adoption is high in the enterprise, but disruption is low. These products cannot learn because generative AI has no brain. They do not think. They do not have human thinking. They are just probabilistic models. And as a result, they are limited in what they can do to pretty much the same things. They summarize, they can generate text, they can generate images, they can sometimes successfully generate a PowerPoint, but even then, you can't do it every time. And at some point, I imagine enterprises rolling out these big integrations, spending all this money, are going, okay, does this do anything we actually need? And at some point, why would they continue? You'll note that we're 3 years into this, and we still don't have any really tangible examples of anyone doing anything interesting or large-scale disruptive. I mean, within a few years of the iPhone, we had tens of millions of smartphones. You had entire organizations adopting smartphones across the board. You had bring-your-own-device companies growing literally just to provision iPhones and similar devices for corporate clients. You had growth within the enterprise that you could map out year by year. We have a line trending down. That's not good. And that people really would love to say, oh, well, the dot-com boom, the line went down too. Nuh-uh. There was no line go down when it came to the growth of cloud compute. And Uber, completely different consumer company, not relevant. But nevertheless, their burn was still significantly lower over time. And they were also a necessary product. I think they're horrifying labor abusers, but still, the product made sense. But in generative AI, the returns are not there on a financial level, but the actual product still does functionally the same thing it did 2 years ago. Since GPT-4, there really hasn't been a significant thing that's changed. Even reasoning models, it's just kind of putting a hat on a hat at this point.
You speak a little bit about in one of your pieces on your site, NVIDIA, and how this bubble could burst if their growth begins to slow. You point out there's this thing called like the Magnificent Seven, basically these big seven companies that make up so much of the U.S. stock market's value. And you posit that NVIDIA is the weakest of these seven at this point. Can you explain why that's the case and what these weaknesses are?
So the funny thing is that NVIDIA is the only company I think that's making any real profit from this. They are doing so well to the point that the market has a fundamentally unhealthy relationship with them. Yep. NVIDIA's revenue, 88% of it comes from data center revenue, which is selling these GPUs and the associated bits with them. Of that revenue, around 42% of it comes from 6 other companies, really mostly 4: Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta. In all 4 of those cases, they're making bugger all revenue. But in this case, the market has come to expect NVIDIA to grow anything from 70 to 150% every single year, year over year, every quarter. They must grow that much. And then you look at it right now, and they slowed to a ridiculously high, but not high enough, 55%, I think it was, year over year. It's unsustainable. There is no way that NVIDIA is just going to be able to go, okay, we'll sell 70 billion, then 100 billion, then 150 billion dollars worth of GPUs. And if you're worried, you should be more worried, because that's actually what needs to happen to keep this rally going. Because nobody's making any real money.
Yeah, and I think just for people that don't know, can you explain NVIDIA's place in the market and why they have it cornered? Just even like, spelling it out very uh, simply just because like what GPUs are and
Hmm.
what their product is, and even if you
Absolutely.
don't mind explaining like Taiwan's role in also all of this.
So Taiwan's role will be with TSMC, which is basically the chip manufacturer du jour. They do everything. TSMC does way more than GPUs. They do more than this. Nvidia makes a GPU, a graphics processing unit, but the ones that they sell a lot of are these AI GPUs, and they're not kind of like the ones you put in a computer. They're much bigger. I think you put 72 of them in a rack. You need these massive cooling rigs and servers to make them run. And they run something called CUDA, C-U-D-A. Now, this language is exclusive to NVIDIA GPUs and is functionally the only way to run generative AI. There are other examples, but no one else can scale like NVIDIA, and indeed, no one can really run CUDA. So you either have to make a large language model specifically for another language and another GPU, which is incredibly hard to do. China's trying to do this right now. Or you can just buy from NVIDIA, which is what everyone's doing. The problem is these GPUs are insanely expensive. We're talking 50,000 to 70,000 a piece, and you need to buy 72 of them each rack, and you need to buy a lot of racks. And so you're in this situation where there's this massive expenditure, this insane amount of money you're spending, and then you install them, and they immediately start losing you money. And based on SemiAnalysis's analysis, they cost about $2 an hour to run, which may not seem too bad when you're making, I don't know, $3 an hour, but that's if you're at 80% or higher utilization, as in like it's being used for 80% of the time. Most of them are not, because the demand is not there for generative AI services. And where it is available, well, it's with Microsoft and OpenAI, and all of that business is being taken. So I believe that most people that are actually installing these GPUs at scale are losing tons of money. And their customers, when they get these generative AI services, are going, why do I care? And I believe most of OpenAI's actual existence within the market is not legitimate. It's based on a 3-year-long marketing campaign by a tech and business media that's lost the plot, and a society and markets that needed a new growth pick. They needed a new thing to point
Yes.
at and say, this is the future. Except
And big
this
tech was
isn't.
behind it too, right? Like, I mean, they're
Oh, yeah.
deeply invested. And another thing that you write in your piece about what could happen if the bubble bursts is these big tech companies abandoning some of this AI stuff. Can you speak a little bit about that and why that could be on the horizon?
So all of these companies, these big tech companies, have been Microsoft's spending $80 billion of capital expenditures this year, Amazon $105 billion of capital expenditures. The market quite liked this when the market had the brains of babies and went, ooh, AI's everywhere. I've heard AI mentioned a few times. I like that. Number go up. Here's the thing. Now that the market is saying, wait, is there any actual return on this investment? They're starting to say, well, is your revenue going to keep growing? Because this whole time, and this is where the business media really screwed up, every time these companies saw revenue growth, the media would say, and that proves that AI is working. Now, what's missing from all of these earnings is any actual explanation of how much money they're making from AI, because they're not making any. Well, that's not true. Microsoft's making $13 billion, and they stopped reporting their AI revenue in January for some reason, projected to make $13 billion this year. $10 billion of that is from OpenAI's compute, which is sold at cost on an already money-losing thing. Meta expecting to make $3 billion. An analyst predicts that Amazon will make $5 billion from AI. This is not a lot of money for companies that make over $100 billion a year. Microsoft Azure made, I think, 70-something billion in the last year and all that. This is chump change. And as you have shown, adoption is going down. The only reason we're seeing this spike right now is honestly, it's not quite Enron, but it smells a little bit about it. The Oracle saying, yeah, we got $300 billion of revenue coming May. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, it's from one company that loses billions of dollars a year, that doesn't have any money right now and needs to convert to a for-profit. But yes, everyone go nuts. It's going to be great. I just hate it because in the end, retail investors, so regular people that are investing with this, who have been lied to, who believe people in the media, who believe senior officials that say AI is so powerful, that don't do their own research, that are not actually being given the full story, are going to invest heavily in NVIDIA, heavily in Oracle, and get their asses kicked when this
Yeah.
falls apart.
And Nvidia, like, I just in terms of its lack of sustainability, I mean, there are going to be new technologies and new different like GPUs that might be more efficient. Like, I
Maybe,
mean,
but the thing,
yeah,
even whether there is or there isn't, Nvidia will survive this. None of these big tech companies are dying, which is why, by the way,
right,
there will be no government bailout. There's nothing to bail out. None of these companies are going to die. Oracle, however, is actually in systemic problems because they are taking on $38 billion of debt, I think, just to complete one part of the compute to serve OpenAI, a company that doesn't have the money.
right,
Nvidia generally, because of that coding language CUDA, and it's a coding language and series of libraries and such to run compute on GPUs. They started working on that over a decade ago. Everyone has been trying to work that out and crack that nut. I don't think anyone's going to do it, but I don't think it really matters because ultimately this boom has come from building capacity for a revolution that never even started arriving. And I think everyone, the sources of information that people rely on, everyone's been let down.
Well, if people read your newsletter on Ghost, where's your ed at, you'll not be kept in the dark. So I really appreciate your work on this, Ed. Obviously, we'll put a link to your newsletter, where's your ed at, in the description below, wherever people are listening to or watching this. Ed Zitron, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.